Hey guys, Miss James here. I wanted to talk to you about the writing scores and kind of explain those to you and how your writing in Amplify is being scored, whether it's being auto scored by Amplify itself or as your teachers go through there and grade your writing. Where exactly are these scores coming from? What do these different numbers mean? And that way you'll have an understanding of those. And so now that you've done some writing in Amplify and you're looking at those scores, we really want you to be able to understand what those scores mean and how to improve upon them. So that's what today's PowerPoint's about. So your learning intentions and success criteria for this PowerPoint is, or for this video, your learning intentions to understand how the writing is scored using those Amplify rubrics, and then you're going to view some student examples that you can use as models for your own writing. So how are you going to know when you're successful? You're going to know that you understand all of this when you can utilize that rubric to improve your own writing and try to make a score of 3 or higher in each of those scoring categories. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the first categories that you're scored in is focus. Okay. Now, if you think about that TN Ready rubric where you were scored on your writing assessments last year, focus is like the focus and organization category on the TN Ready rubric. So when we define focus, to select one specific moment or idea and to develop just this moment or idea in your writing. So if you think about some of the writing that we've done already in Amplify, we are focusing on that one moment in time, okay? So we have to really focus in on that, all right? So this is important. We're gonna select one specific moment or idea and develop just this moment, okay? So that's what we mean by focus, all right? So let's talk about these different numbers and what they mean, okay? So our goal is to make a 3 or a 4. That's where we ultimately want you to be, okay? At least by the end of the year. So there's lots of room for improvement. Even a 4 is not perfect. There's still room for improvement with a 4, but we want you to work your way up to that. So let's look at what a 4 means. I always like to look at the best, look at the top, and then work your way down so you can clearly see those differences between each level. So with a 4 in focus, you are writing a minimum of 130 words, okay? So that means you have to have at least 130 words in your writing, okay? And I like this word right here, and I'm going to highlight this in a different color. And maybe not that color, that's too dark. I like this keyword and. And means both. Almost all sentences develop the same moment, idea, or claim. Okay, so 130 words, and you have to develop the same moment, idea, or claim. You can't be pulling in other moments from other parts of the text. You got to stick to this one moment. Okay, that's a 4. So it's very focused. All right, it develops and it's organized. It develops that one moment or idea, okay? All right, so now we look at a 3. This is very good, okay? This is grade level. This meets our expectations. You're getting there, okay? We still got some room for improvement, doing well. All right, here you're going to write a minimum of 95 words. So you got at least 95 words in your writing. And here's that key word again. And most of your sentences develop that same moment, idea, or claim, okay? So put even a different color in here. So in a 4, we have almost all. Oh, not that color, that doesn't work, okay? I'll go back to try this one. In a 4, we have almost all. In a 3, we have most, okay? So some key words there, all right? Let's look at a 2. A 2 means you're getting better. You have definitely made some progress in your writing. That's fantastic. We want to see that growth continue, okay? So in a 2, you are writing 50 words in your response, okay? 50 words, all right? Here we go, this key word again, and, all right? Now we have some of your sentences. Some of the sentence focus on the same moment, idea, or claim, okay? Here's a key part with a 2. Here's that key word, but. It's hard to understand how some of the sentences are connected. So maybe the thoughts are starting to generate, but you don't fully connect all of those ideas. And so it's a little bit harder to understand what exactly is the point you're trying to make. So we look at that as a 2, okay? Then we have a 1. A 1 really needs some work. We're looking at 25 words, okay, or less, okay? And here's that key word, and very few of your sentences are focused, okay? Very few of the sentences are focused. So it really lacks being on topic, all right? So this is your focus category, okay? 4, 130 words. Keep in mind too, this is what you're writing in 10 minutes, okay? You're writing 130 words in 10 minutes, all right? That should be easily doable, okay? So a 4, 130 words, a 3, 95 words, a 2 is 50, a 1 is 25, okay? Look at those keywords again. Almost all, most, some, and very few, okay? So you got to make sure that you stay focused on that one moment in time that the prompt is asking you to focus on, okay? All right, let's look at the use of evidence. Everything that we have done so far in Amplify, all of our writing, we have asked you to cite evidence, okay? We're asking you to use an evidence-based term and put some quotation marks in there, use some evidence from the text to support that focus moment, that idea that you're trying to get across, okay? All right, so the definition for use of evidence is when you select, let me get my highlighter going here, the right color, you select and describe, okay? This is important too, quoted details from the text to develop and support your idea, okay? So let me show you something right here really quickly, okay? When we talk about selecting, okay, this is what you have in quotation marks. Forgive my writing on the screen. Okay, what the evidence you've selected and put in your passage, in your writing, that's what's in quotation marks, okay? That's your evidence-based term. You copied that directly from the text into your writing. When we talk about describing it, that's what we're talking about explaining it, okay? Elaborating on that evidence. This is where you use those sentence starters that says, this evidence shows Geely's happiness because, and then you explain how that quote shows happiness, or this evidence shows Geely's sadness because, and then in your own words, you explain how that quote shows sadness. So you really have to develop and support your idea. You have to explain why you chose that piece of evidence, okay? So the use of evidence has 2 parts. Okay, this is equivalent to that development category on the TN Ready rubric, all right, that you may remember from last year. All right, this is development. Use of evidence is development. So you got to have evidence and then you got to explain that evidence. You got to connect it all together, okay? So let's look at what each of these scores mean. All right, so again, I like to start with a 4. A 4 is great work. You still have that 130 words, and you use evidence and describe key parts of the evidence to show how it supports your idea or claim, okay? So you've used evidence and you've described it. You've said why you chose that piece of evidence. You've said how that evidence shows sadness or happiness or creates that particular mood or atmosphere. You've said that 2 times. You've used 2 pieces of evidence. You've explained each piece of evidence, okay? Then we look at a 3. A 3 is, again, those 95 words. You've used evidence and described most of it, okay? We've described most of it, okay? This is where maybe you put a second piece of evidence in there, but you forgot to explain it. or your explanation kind of repeats the evidence, okay? A little bit different there. All right, so you do describe it, you attempt to describe it, most of it's there, okay? When we look at a 2, we've got those 50 words. You use some evidence. So maybe you only put one piece of evidence in there instead of 2 pieces of evidence, okay? And you describe some key parts, all right? You attempt to explain your evidence in some way. A 1 needs work. You have 25 words or less. You have no evidence or almost no evidence, and you do not describe parts of the evidence, okay? There's a little keyword there that's covered up with the camera, but with a 1, you don't describe it. You don't explain why you chose that piece of evidence. You just threw that evidence in the paragraph and let it go, okay? There's also another side of this use of evidence. If your entire paragraph is evidence and you copied and pasted evidence from the passage and you turned that in as your paragraph, that's also a 1. And that's simply because you didn't explain it. You didn't tell us what question you were trying to answer. You didn't do anything other than copy and paste somebody else's words. So you didn't explain anything, okay? We can't give you a score for something that's not yours. That makes sense. All right. Okay, let's keep going. Then we look at conventions. All right. When we talk about conventions, we are talking about the grammar and sentence mechanics, okay, that enable you as the writer to control the clarity and emphasis on your sentence. All right. So with conventions, we're really looking at making sure that you have complete sentences. You've used capital letters, you've used your end punctuation, you've used quotation marks around your evidence, you have proper grammar and verb usage, okay? Your sentences are very clear, we understand what you're trying to say, and you haven't used any slang terms or street terms that, you know, we would use with our friends. This is a formal piece of writing, and we want our vocabulary to be formal. So we want to avoid some of those slang and street terms that you might use, okay? So let's look at what those scores mean. A 4, all of your sentences are complete and they're punctuated correctly, all right? Notice that word, all of them. Everything's capitalized the way it's supposed to be, it's punctuated the way it's supposed to be, it's a complete sentence, okay? All of them, all right? That's hard to do. Even for professional writers, guys, that's hard to do. Professional writers make mistakes in their writing, and they have editors who go through and try to fix that. So don't be frustrated if you don't get a 4 in punctuation or in conventions, excuse me, if you don't get a 4 in conventions the first time. That takes work, that takes revising, that takes editing, that takes time, okay? Do your best, try to avoid careless mistakes, but don't get frustrated with that, okay? All right, so let's look at a 3. In a 3, most of your sentences are complete and punctuated correctly. There may be a few errors, but, here's that word but, they do not make it hard for us to understand your writing, okay? So you wrote your paragraph, you missed a capital letter. Well, capital letter doesn't keep me from understanding what you're trying to say, okay? So that may give you a 3, because that's an error. We want to make sure everything's capitalized appropriately, but it doesn't keep me from understanding what you're trying to say. So that could be a 3, okay? In a 2, most of your sentences are complete, okay? Now I want you to notice something here. In a 4, all of your sentences are complete. In a 3, most of the sentences are complete. And in a 2, it still says most of your sentences are complete, okay? Here's where it gets a little different. All right, let me change colors here. Here, errors do make it challenging to understand, okay? This is where I'm reading your paragraphs and I'm like, wait, what are they trying to say here? This doesn't make sense. And if that stops me, you might have a 2 in conventions because I'm having to try to figure out what it is you're trying to say, okay? You still have complete sentences, but maybe things were spelled wrong, maybe things aren't capitalized enough, punctuation's a little weird, okay? I have some trouble figuring out what you're trying to say. And spelling should be over here in this list too of conventions. I forgot to put that over there. All right. For a one needs some work. In a one, you have lots of fragments or run-ons, okay? And these fragments and run-ons really keep me from being able to understand what you're trying to say. I am so confused with trying to read your paragraph that I can't score it. And when that happens, that's a 1, okay? So let's just a quick reminder, what is a sentence fragment? What's a fragment? Well, if a sentence is a complete thought, it has a subject, it has a verb, it expresses a complete thought, it makes sense in my head. A fragment is the opposite of that. A fragment might be missing the subject, it might be missing the verb, and it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't tie together to be a complete thought, okay? That's a fragment. A run-on sentence is the opposite of that. A run-on sentence is where we've got, it's not even a sentence. I don't even know why I'm saying that. A run-on is when you have all these sentences put together and there's no punctuation between them, or you put commas between them to separate them instead of periods, okay? So if you don't have any end punctuation in your writing, go back and put punctuation in. You have one giant run-on sentence, okay? Make sure you punctuate the ends of your sentences. These are the scores. These are the 3 main categories that are scored in Amplify, okay? So really look through your writing and try to ask yourself, would I give this a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1? And look at each of those 4 categories, okay? Now, how are you going to do that? Well, let me show you, okay? Let's walk through some together. Let's look at some student examples. These are called exemplary examples because they meet certain expectations for scores. So here we go. Let's start with focus. And again, I like to start at the top. I want you to see what a model piece of writing looks like first, okay? This is a writing prompt where we describe Geely's feelings about her house before and after the search, okay? Number of minutes spent on assignment was 15, so you can see we're hitting that 10 to 15 minute writing mark. So maybe they took a few more minutes than 10, and that's okay. All right, their word count is 180. That's important. I like these examples because they're all color coded. Okay, that's important too. I like to color code your writing because I think that helps to give you a visual image of what you have and what you don't have. Okay, so let's look at this. Let's look at what the different colored highlights mean first. So this student wrote 180 words, and simply because they have so many words, they're eligible all the way up to a 4 in focus. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to receive a 4 because it's not just the word count that matters, okay? However, this one does get a 4 because every sentence refers back to and develops the idea about Geely's home before and after the search, okay? So if it's in green, it clearly states his idea. Clearly is answering the question. That's that topic sentence that we've been talking so much about, okay? So it clearly states his idea. Let's look at that. At the start of the Cultural Revolution, Geely felt proud of her home. After the search, however, she felt scared and sad. So this particular student answered the question at the very beginning. Both sides told what she felt at the beginning and how she felt after the search, okay? That's important to do. You've got to answer that question. That's your topic sentence, all right? So we clearly state the idea. Now, if it's in blue, they're writing additional sentences that support the idea. So these come from you. These are not evidence from the text. These sentences come from your head, why you chose the evidence, how they're all connected together, okay? It says, she was appreciative of her house because she knew it was better than other people's, okay? Now I'm going to look at this. I'm going to look at some keywords here. All right. If in our main idea, in our stating our idea, if we're saying that she's proud, well, then I need to have some vocabulary in my other sentences that show pride. Well, if she's appreciative, that's showing pride. If it's better than others, well, she's comparing it to others and saying it's better, so that's going to be a source of pride, okay? So I've got some key vocabulary that's creating some cohesion, and so that I can show that my ideas are connected. All right, now here we've got a piece of evidence from the text. I loved our top floor room. A huge French window and a high ceiling made it bright all year round, warmer during the winter and cooler in the summer. Our room was 10 times as big as many of my classmates' homes. Okay, so again, I'm going to look for those key words that help illustrate that pride. Loved. Okay, if you love something, you're going to be proud of it. Okay, we could say the description of the high French window, or the French window, the high ceiling. When you compare it 10 times as big as many of our classmates' homes. So again, comparing it. Okay. Now I'm going to explain that piece of evidence. I'm going to show how this piece of evidence shows appreciation and shows pride. Look at this. She loved the fact that her house was the top floor. It had so much sunlight and was the perfect temperature year-round and was spacious. But, okay, remember, I got to show before and after the search. So here I've got a transition word, but her feelings greatly contrast, showing a difference from this after the search. I pull a piece of evidence. The apartment was a mess. The middle of the floor was strewn with the contents of the overturned chests and drawers, and the stamp album was gone forever. Okay? So this piece of evidence directly describes the apartment at the beginning, and this student chose a piece of evidence that is describing the apartment after the search. Okay? That's important too. Your pieces of evidence have to show that difference if that's what your prompt is asking you to do. Okay? And then again, I've got some additional sentences that support that idea. She is upset, so I've gone from proud to upset, that her usually clean house is now ruined. Again, showing that comparison right there. Okay? She is sad that the Red Guards would destroy their possessions. She is very distraught that her stamp book, which she called her treasure, was taken. Okay, so all these keywords that I've underlined and circled, these are helping to answer this question that show before and after. Okay, and they're connecting those ideas about pride and then showing the contrast about after. Okay, so this is a score of 4. This is something for focus-wise that we really want you to think about when you're writing your paragraphs, okay? Sometimes there's a fine line between a 3 and a 4, okay? So same prompt, feelings about her house before and after the search. I've still got my idea stated clearly. Before the search, Julie was proud of how special her house was. After the search, she feels vulnerable and exposed. Now, I want to point this out. Here's a comma right here. So this is really a run-on sentence. Okay. But I'm still showing that compare and contrast. I've got before and after. Okay. I've got my additional sentences that support my idea. Julie is proud of her house because it's clean and bigger than a lot of people's houses at school. So proud. I'm explaining why, clean and bigger, okay? Many people did not have a bathroom at all or even a flush toilet, and very few had a full-size bathrooms that they did not have to share with other families, okay? So I've got evidence from the text where she describes the bathroom and how they have something that many other families don't. And then I transition. After the search, she feels like her privacy has been violated. She feels embarrassed that they ransacked all her private belongings. She feels sad that her treasures have been destroyed. She feels like nothing is safe anymore. Now notice, what am I missing here? I'm missing a piece of evidence. I need a piece of evidence to support that, okay? I explained, and I'm still on my topic. I'm talking about after the search, but I don't support it with evidence, okay? And then I've got this sentence right here. I once had a friend who had her house broken into and she wasn't home and she felt violated too. She lives on Robin Road and 5 houses on her street got broken into. Well, that doesn't talk about G. Lee. So while it may seem like it's on the same topic, when we're talking about privacy being violated, that sentence is not on topic. So that detracts from the focus of the purpose of the paragraph, okay? So it didn't matter that this person had 143 words. They still got a score of 3 on focus because they have this sentence that takes away from the topic. Okay, let's keep going. Let's look at a focus score of 2, okay? A score of 2. Still got my clearly stated idea. G. Lee feels happy, whereas after, okay, so I've got my before and after. I still clearly state my idea. Before the search, G. Lee says, I loved our top floor room. I've got my evidence. I talk about it. G. Lee feels very proud they live at the top of the building. After the search, she complains, so I'm still transitioning between the ideas. The apartment was a mess. My evidence pieces are connected. They both talk about the room, okay? But there's no additional sentences to support the after effect, okay? So I'm on focus, I'm on point, but I don't have enough, okay? I just don't have enough to really be able to explain how everything is connected. So my focus is a little off, okay? All right, let's keep going. Let's look at a 1. All right, for a 1, okay? Notice this person had 74 words, okay? This one introduces the idea regarding our feelings before and after, but doesn't develop the idea. Before the search of her house by the Red Guards, G. Lee felt very lucky. Okay, and they provided a piece of evidence. Until the audition, I felt like the luckiest girl in the world, so they chose a piece of evidence that's connected. After the search, she felt terrible. There's no evidence here. There's no further explanation that kind of describes the evidence and how she feels before and after the search. It says, another time G. Lee felt terrible was when her father told her she could not audition for the Central Liberation Army Arts Academy. She was most upset when she found out her grandfather was a landlord. So while these sentences are still talking about G. Lee, and they're talking about how she felt, they are not focused on before and after the search. And that's where you have to be really super careful, making sure that everything you put in your paragraph really focuses on answering and explaining that question. Okay, that's the focus category. Now let's look at use of evidence. Okay, these are different examples. This is not the same as the focus example of a 4. This person had 194 minutes. Okay, again, this is color coded. So we've got purple is a direct quote and then describes what he notices in the quote. Okay, so this one has got the evidence and the explanation all in one. At the start of the Cultural Revolution, G. Lee felt proud of her home, but after the search, she felt ashamed. Again, focuses and answers that question right at the beginning. In the beginning, G. Lee raved about her house. Best of all, we had a private bathroom. Okay, G. Lee was especially proud of the bathroom in their house, as is shown by her use of the phrase best of all. Okay, so they really connected that evidence there. They really explained when she said best of all, she's showing how proud she is. Many people did not have bathrooms, so they had to share with other families. She shows that her family is privileged, that they only share their bathroom with each other, and she appreciates this luxury. Okay, so all these key words that are still connecting with the idea of being proud of her home. Appreciates, luxury, privileged. Okay, others had to share, proud, the phrase best of all. Okay, so really connecting in those ideas about the pride before the search. And then after the search, G. Lee says, all my treasures were scattered on the floor, meaning, so we're explaining that evidence here, meaning the things that are the most special to her are broken and gone for good. Okay, so we're that feeling of shame. Okay, scattered on the floor. Things that are most special are broken and gone. All right, so connecting to that idea of shame. She also says, I loved my collection even though I knew I should not. By writing even though, so pointing out those transition words, Geely shows that she feels ashamed. Collecting things was considered bourgeois, and she should not have even had the treasures in the first place. She feels embarrassed for collecting them and even more ashamed for being upset that they are gone. Okay, Geely's pride for her home before the search turns to shame after the search. This person even put a conclusion sentence that restates the topic sentence in a different way. And that's definitely something that we want you to try to put in your writing as well. Okay, so this person actually used 3 pieces of evidence and describes each one, how they're all connected. And that's definitely something that we want you to work toward. Okay. For 7th grade, we really like the use of 2 pieces of evidence. If you can pull more in there without straying from topic, go for it. All right, let's look for evidence. Okay. This person has 180 words. We've got a direct quote, got 2 direct quotes, and then we missed the opportunity to explain it. And that's important. The explanation part of your direct quote is so important. Okay. Before the search, Geely said, I loved our top floor room. A huge French window has a high ceiling, made it bright all year round. Our room was 10 times as big as many of my classmates' homes and 100 times brighter. She felt, so that's the end of my quote. Notice the closing quotation marks. And this person's gonna explain her quote. She felt that her house was a lot better than everyone else's house, because she doesn't just say that her house was bigger or brighter. She says it was 10 times as big and 100 times brighter. She felt she was rich and lucky to have a house like that, because most people lived in small, crowded, dark houses. Okay, so looking at how they explained that, how that vocabulary really helps to create her feelings. Okay, so important. Look at the vocabulary, look at the words that are used. What do those words tell you? After the search, she says the apartment was a mess. She adds, the stamp collection was gone, the stamp album was gone forever, meaning, in my quotes, meaning that it was ruined. She had already said that her stamp collection was very special to her, and now it is trash. She uses the word forever to show that this is permanent. She's upset that her precious stamps will never be the same. Okay, so this one, this person adds a second quote and describes it. But this quote right here in the light blue, there's nothing to explain that. Why did we say the apartment was a mess? What was the purpose of that quote? Without something after it to explain why it's there, it's really kind of a pointless piece of evidence, okay? So it's really important that you do things like explain after each piece of evidence why it's there, okay? So that's a score of 3. We've got 2 pieces of evidence that are thorough and they're explained. We have 1 that's not. Okay. This person only had 76 words. Okay. So let's look at the passage. Before the search, Geely said, I loved our top floor room. I felt like the luckiest girl in the world. Well, that's great. But why did we choose those quotes? They explain, the quotes themselves tell about Geely, but there's no explanation to them. Doesn't explain anything after it. It just moves right on into the next part. But after the search, Geely felt violated. So this is important to notice. Here, whoops, I meant to use my highlighter there. Use my pen. Erase that. There we go. Okay. Right here we have, but after the search, she felt violated. So I describe her feelings after the search, but I never described them before the search. Okay, so she felt violated. And then there's a piece of evidence. I felt as if I had been stripped naked in public. Oh my, that'd be terrible. She uses the strong phrase stripped naked, which shows that she felt extremely exposed. This is some great explanation of the evidence. I wish they had done that the first time. She had no privacy. They went through everything in her house, no matter how special it was to her. Okay. So this second piece of evidence is fantastic. The explanation is great. This idea of being stripped naked and feeling extremely exposed, those are strong words, and they explain that it's a strong phrase, okay? But they just missed the boat on that with that first piece of evidence. So really important, explain every piece of evidence, okay? All right, let's look at a use of evidence of a 1, okay? We're almost done. Hang with me. I know this is long. Almost done. This passage is 76 minutes, or 76 words. Sorry, it's not a 76-minute video. Julie talks a lot about her house and her family. Well, that's not about her feelings, first of all. That's a problem. You can't use evidence to support something that you never stated. Okay? She says, I love our top floor room. Many did not have a bathroom at all or even flush a toilet. Okay, I want you to notice on this one, we go from evidence to evidence to evidence to evidence. Okay, there's nothing here, it says without describing. There's nothing here that describes why those pieces of evidence are so important. And you have to do that. You have to explain your evidence. Okay. So this gets a 1 because for use of evidence, especially because that's all the paragraph is. It's just a paragraph of evidence. The only words that are the writer's own are the attempt at a topic sentence, which really doesn't even answer the question, and then her evidence-based terms where she also says, and in paragraph 70 she says. Those are the only things that belong to the writer themselves. Everything else is evidence. You got to explain. You got to put your own thoughts in there. That's the purpose of writing. Analyze it. Analyze the text. Put those in there. If you have any questions about the scoring rubric or about your own writing, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I will be happy to answer those for you, walk you through some writing on your own, try to give you as much feedback as I can so that you too can improve your writing. Okay? All right. That is the end of this video. Sorry it's so long. Hope you stick with it.